I honestly, I feel ashamed of being part of the industry right now.
Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhury. Thank you for watching Inquiry. It's been a strange few months for the media. Witch hunts, TRP scams, dogfights, screaming anchors, troll armies, fake news, defamation suits. It seems as if the very basics of journalism has flown out of the window. It's not a pretty time. The media is on trial. Several court judgments have come out censoring members of the media for their excess. Corporates like Bajaj Auto and Parle-G have said they will not advertise with some toxic channels. And in an unprecedented move, most of Bollywood has come together to file a case against two TV channels, reminding them of the basics of broadcast journalism. So, what is the fraternity feeling about itself? Is there any introspection, dismay? Is there a move to self correct? Owners, governments, anchors, audience, who is most to blame? Ironically, many in the media did not want to come on record. So I'm doubly pleased to have the executive director and proprietor of the legendary Express Group, Anant Goenka, on Inquiry today. The Ramnath Goenka Awards are amongst the most coveted in the industry, and as third generation custodian of a proud legacy, Anant is a crucial voice in the industry. So thank you very much for joining me, Anant, on Inquiry. It's been a lot of pursuing, but I'm delighted that you're doing this.
No, I'm happy to be here. You said all the things to me that I tell people who are refusing to do interviews or to give access. So I couldn't be a hypocrite, and I said so I'm happy to do it.
So as I just said, Anant, it's not a very good time for the media, and we'll come to that. But first, you're a three-generation media family, and you have lived and breathed and grown up with media all your life. So I wanted to ask you, what does journalism mean to you? What do you think is its role in society?
Interesting. Okay. I think the role of journalism in society today is really to find that one, how I would define what I would like ideally journalism to be about today. If you ask me, I would like it to be about finding that one common truth. Invest more time and effort finding that common ground that creates less polarization, less of a divided society than kind of just talking to one or the other extreme.
That's an interesting concept, Anand, especially for a polarized time like this. But common ground is a very elusive concept to pin down. So, can I ask you to define journalism more broadly? You know, as I've said, you've lived and breathed this for three generations. So, in essence, what does journalism mean to you? What is it meant to be?
I do think that there has to be a certain cause, a certain role that has to define why we're doing this profession. I always say, I feel there are so many people who are in school with me who are good friends who I feel I'm way smarter than them, but they're making so much more money than I am. So I really don't think that,
Join the
this
club.
is what's that? Yeah. So I know I genuinely, I feel this is not the profession where, if I wanted to, own a Gulfstream and, if I wanted to be Fortune 500 or whatever, I mean, I don't think this is the right profession for that. I think if that is your ultimate goal and that is your aim, obviously, super to have that goal and that aim. But if this is the profession you choose to get there, you will have to, make some compromises down the way. And I think that the important point that I'm coming around to realizing is that you have to find a purpose which is bigger than you, which can sort of live for longer one lifespan. I think that's really why you see all the most story titles all over the world, whether it's the New York Times, the Washington Post, or they've all had a certain purpose which has been strong and around for for centuries almost. I think that maybe it's a little bit lacking right now in India. We don't have that kind of that very simple clarity on sort of why we're here to do what we do. My grandfather, who started the paper was started by on Gandhi's call for an English newspaper that supported freedom. That's why Express kind of came to be. That was one sort of solid purpose. It wasn't the P&L at all. The P&L was irrelevant, really. It was just like how can I raise money to kind of in English talk about the need for freedom. Another purpose came in terms of the emergency, which everybody knows that the role Express played and a few other papers played in terms of defending free speech and democracy. And again, the P&L went out of the window. It was just how can I create money to just keep the paper printing and and really challenge authoritarian voices and a dissent of free speech. So there was a certain there was a purpose which was much larger than the business, the P&L, the profit. I think that larger purpose is something that I think we're kind of missing now.
That brings me to the immediate context. Like I said, there's such a negative atmosphere in the industry today. To put it very bluntly, do you think the media is playing the role that it should in society? On a scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you?
No, of course not. I mean, there's no. I mean, I think even the people who have been very successful in all this, in all the chaos that's happening, I'm sure if they, when they go back, and I'm sure they have a hard time, looking in the mirror, because I feel ashamed of being part of the industry right now. It is so. I mean, it is just. It's just classless. It's just we've just brought ourselves down to a new, to a new low. I don't know if I've seen. I mean, I've only formally been at Express for 10 years now, but as you said, my whole life I've kind of lived in a newsroom environment at home. It's never been like this, right? I mean, at least not in my, and I just think it's really sad and upsetting. I think we're doing the opposite of what we should be doing. Again, I really believe that our role needs to be to make society stronger. We have to play that kind of we shouldn't be tearing society apart. We shouldn't be pulling people to extremes. I think, majority of India is moderate, and we are just making them extreme just by kind of, just by the way we're kind of behaving. And I think we're at a low point in the history of news media in India, certainly at an extremely low point. I also do believe, though, that we should examine why we got here. And I am hopeful. So A, we should examine why we got here. And B, I'm equally optimistic and hopeful that we're not going to be here for too long, because, readers do kind of reject eventually, and they kind of, they do evolve. So if I can spend a minute to tell you, in my view, why we kind of got here, right? And I don't think that, the superstars of journalism who commanded most of media, till just around the time I kind of entered was in 2012. They just never really gave the other perspective a chance. They never really gave it enough. I think, one of the core principles and the core rules of journalism that we have learned in journalism schools, and I'm sure you've also told it, in your newsroom, is to be a mirror to society. And if a part of that, being a part of that mirror, is seeing things that you don't like, you shouldn't be standing in judgment on that. You have a responsibility to kind of also give that, a certain popular perspective space and voice. And I think the fact that I think one of the reasons we're here is because a lot of people just didn't. I was talking to a very senior opinion editor of a national newspaper in America, and they were telling me that, the kind of backlash they get when they publish conservative opinions in their own paper,
Right.
The kind of backlash they get from their newsroom and from their readers is so significant. But I'm not surprised by that. I think one of the reasons why, today you see a figure, a personality like Trump being so successful. I think that this polarization within media. So I think we also have some looking inwards to do. And I do think that, optimistically speaking, that audiences are smart enough to to get tired of this at some point. Eventually, these kind of formats they'll exist. I don't think they'll ever die, but they may not just. I hope and I pray and I am optimistic that they will not be taken as seriously. They won't move markets. They won't be centered in parliament. It'll be there, but it may not, I hope, be taken as seriously as they are.
I totally agree with you about just the fact that there was a kind of marginalization of any point of view that didn't sit, with the kind of liberal media that dominated the landscape.
Yeah.
And I asked this question to Anya Schifrin, who's a global media expert. She's a teacher at Columbia University.
Yeah.
She made a distinction finally. She said, yes, maybe there was some of that, but out of that apologetic position, one can't also then be making space for toxicity and bigotry and, completely things that completely violate, let's say, the Constitution, not our subjective value system, but both the constitutions of our democracies, whether it's in America or India.
I completely agree. But again, it's not Anya's or mine or your decision, right? I mean, these are just the market forces, whatever they are. We can't control sort of who finds an audience, who's able to tell consistently, keep communicating to audiences. Yeah. So I'm just trying to say that I think one of the reasons we're here is because of exactly this liberal silo that media was kind of dominated with. And by the way, I want to just say one more thing. I don't think this is happening only in India. This is happening all over the world, and it's very closely linked to the politics as well, right? As we're seeing so many liberal democracies coming around the world. We're just seeing people just the popular opinion not being as liberal as we all kind of expected it to be, or we all were kind of taken, took for granted.
Right.
I don't think it makes it right. I don't think that we should therefore all kind of, bow our heads to the popular view.
So I agree with you, Anant, that partly it's just that one didn't engage with it creatively with respect. And so, there's a kind of massive backlash and upsurge of that. So, but that's going into a whole other civilizational area. Right now, I'm going to stick with our profession. You made a very interesting statement once where you said that most of the national channels today are putting out what you would call current affairs pornography, and in some ways, the Riya Chakravarti Sushant Singh case absolutely epitomizes that, at least from my perspective, is the nadir of journalism. Yet there are others who see it as kind of crusading journalism, a fight for justice, a fight for truth. So one, how do you see it? And what about this particular coverage has really disturbed you?
There's nothing which is, more irresponsible than to kind of, play judge, jury, and executioner on primetime TV. I think the moment, you start, you have a setup which is primarily focused on opinions and not on reporting. You find yourself compelled to be as more emotional the next day than you were the previous day. You find yourself kind of coming to conclusions. You manufacture stuff, or you bring stuff that hasn't yet passed any real smell test before you kind of give it to an audience. So I think it's it's the nature of the beast. It's the format which unfortunately has come down to this. But again, we must introspect and see again, why are audiences taking this? Why are audiences, lapping it up? And that's something that I feel, again, we haven't spent enough time understanding. There is something here, right? Like what even if the most fake piece of content information goes viral, I feel the fact that it has gone viral, there is something to be understood from the fact that it has gone viral. There's some truth, therefore, to that. It's touching. Somebody wants to agree with that to share it. That I think is just so many views, thoughts, emotions, vulnerabilities, insecurities, fears, anxieties of audiences just not being understood, not being captured, not being served in a consistent manner. That I think leads to this honestly surprising kind of consumption of such I won't use the word dishonest, but I'll use the word incomplete journalism.
That's the kindest word I've heard this season. Incomplete journalism.
No, because you see, you and I can have a view on the kind of journalism that it is, and we can say it's not even journalism, whatever. But the fact is that there are people who want it. The fact that people are consuming it, and there are people who are consuming it thinking it is news. We have to be critical because as a 34-year-old newspaper promoter in the age of 2020, I don't have the luxury of saying, yeah, the audience is wrong. That doesn't work. Leave it. We don't have that luxury anymore of just turning our noses at something that's happening. We have to understand why it's happening, and we have to try to figure out, what A, we have done wrong to kind of get to this place, A, and B, what we can do to kind of be responsible and do our job responsibly, and yet be able to, have an audience for it.
Right.
So I think that's our challenge that we absolutely have to do. I think those who will crack that, I think they will see, a good 30, 50 years ahead of them.
I think we'll have to articulate this thing about the audience with more nuance, Anant, because, so much of the sensationalism and the tonality that's going off the rails is because one is speaking to the lowest common denominator. And of course, there's an audience for it, but that can't legitimize it, and so
the brand of journalism that we're referring to, the brand, that kind of content certainly isn't the kind of content that fits in with the Express. Certainly is the kind of content that we, put out or that we endorse. But we must again understand that there is a certain skill of being able to wake up every morning and understand that this is a popular perception, this is a popular view or this is the view that has a high chance of being viral. So making that judgment also is a certain skill set, a certain art. My only point is that being able to smell an audience, to be able to smell an audience response fairly accurately for a long period of time, I'm trying to be dispassionate and tell you that that there is some skill involved in that. We have to kind of understand that that what we were talking about earlier, putting that consumer in the middle. we
But
don't
Anand,
endorse it. We
I
don't want to
mean,
do it. But it is something. It is a certain skill that is not easy. So I don't think it's a very replicable thing. The second part is I don't look. I honestly don't believe that no matter how long these formats exist for, I don't know whether these formats are going to be taken as seriously every day as they have been taken.
but so Anand, I'm going to ask you to clarify for audiences who are not, necessarily positioned, or even those who, who may like the particular sort of journalism that we are talking about, and others who don't like it. I don't want this to be a subjective conversation. We agree mostly, so that's not going to serve any purpose. What I would like you to do is that, could you clarify if, for instance, Times Now and Republic TV think that they are fighting a cause for justice, for Sushant Singh. Even now, when defamation cases were filed against them, they said, oh, bring it on. We are taking on the powerful. And so, in the course of journalism, we'll take on anything. So I don't want this to be subjective. Could you help clarify why what they are doing at this moment does not serve the principles of justice? Let's forget whether we like it, don't like it, whether we think Ria is right or Sushant is right, or leave the polarization.
Yeah.
Just the principle. Can you help explain why
I think
it is not what journalism should be doing?
journalism, by definition, is a very democratic value. Democratic value means you're fighting for free speech. You're fighting for free press. Fighting for free speech and free press. Tenets of democracy. Democracy means strengthening every institution, and strengthening institutions means letting other institutions do their jobs. If, as media, you're going to, be judge, jury, and executioner for anyone, you're not letting democracy function. You're coming in the way of other institutions, and so that's kind of why I think that is dangerous, not journalistic, and not serving the larger purpose. More importantly, I think it is again tearing society apart. It is not trying to find a common truth to bring society together. It is taking a position and then kind of just hammering at it, and that is again that's creating two sides, immediately creating two sides without any facts for any side. It's an emotional creating of two sides. So neither of these, I think there are two reasons why I would not call this a journalistic endeavor. That's a straightforward answer.
Yeah, and then of course there's the whole issue of media trials. And what's worrying me is that the backlash on this and this whataboutery that kicks in is again why I'm asking you to clarify the principles of these things. Because right now, say someone like me who's always been absolute free speech fundamentalist, pro media trials, in terms of that the media has to question just because a court has given a judgment, even that is not gospel truth. And so when one is resisting the media trial in this situation, again, there will be a whataboutery later when, one is wanting the media to investigate. They'll say, oh, it's all subjective. So can you explain, as a brand that is very, very investigative, in what context and in what tonality is a media trial or media investigation justified, and why is this situation not justified?
So two things, right? One, I think, is fundamentally asking questions is different from playing the whole thing out, as in deciding the whole thing. So if you see, whenever Express, and I give a lot of credit to our chief editor Rajkumar Jha, I'm sure you have interacted with. If we find that something's amiss, we will highlight it. We'll ask a question. We're not taking a position saying that this is wrong. That is not the job of the newsroom. That is the job of the institutions that are there for it.
Yeah.
For instance, when we did Panama Papers, when we did all these Swiss leaks and all the leaks of all these secret bank accounts, these from all various tax havens around the world, it's not our job to go around crusading the government to take action on it. Government has taken action on it anyway, but if they didn't, it's not our job to go around doing that. We have to we find something, we publish it, and then what happens next is really up to the institutions, up to the audiences. If there is an organic swelling of curiosity after the story, that's great.
So just in the interest of factuality, if you were to look at government, owners, anchors, and audience, and were to assess each one's percentage of role in the mess that we are in, just give us on a scale of 10, what are you blaming each one for?
Owners, governments, anchors, and audiences. I will blame, I think, to a large degree, the leaders, the editor leaders of news organizations that pre the 2014, pre 2012, they were talking in such echo chambers that it's this led to this outburst of such a polarized and a divergent perspective, uh, that I think there is a certain causal that I'm taking as an industry we should understand, appreciate, and take responsibility for. And where we are today, I'd say, well, I'd say if there is any one person, at the end of the day, the buck does stop with the owner. And if the owner wants to keep allowing a certain format to continue, that's his or her call. And I mean, they certainly have the power to stop.
So Anant, a lot of when people critique the media now, it's, you criticize the anchors, you criticize the star journalists and their style and their intent and their particular club of bigotry. But if you just step one step back, it's really about proprietors and owners. It is about the owners setting the bar for what journalism will pass in their stable and not. And every anchor would change their tune if the proprietors change theirs. So, has there been any move from any owner, because the profession is in such a mess? Has there been any attempt to bring all owners together to arrive at that common ground that you spoke of at the very start of the conversation?
No, I obviously will hesitate to share a lot of conversations that proprietors have had that I've either been privy to or I've heard. But I can tell you that there is certainly a very I don't think there's any proprietor today who is who's smiling and saying, "This is going according to plan, and I'm happy." I think everybody is concerned. Even the most business driven proprietors, even the most bottom line driven companies, as cultural as DNAs, are wondering how sustainable is this and what happens next. So I think the concern is certainly there. I can tell you that's for sure. How to solve the problem, I don't think anybody really knows. Again, I really don't think there is a quick fix. I don't think you can helicopter in a regulator who we'll all agree to, and they will kind of fix. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we have to accept that this is that certain certain format of news, especially on television, it has descended to this for various reasons. We should introspect why, but it has descended to this. I don't think this is a short. I think we'll have to just wait for the cycle of the audiences to begin to either reject or to look for alternate formats. Somebody with some guts will have to come in and actually fund an alternate format. So I think a well-intentioned, long-term, a patient capital needs to come in to invest in an alternate force, in an alternate format. And I think it will take its time, but I think until that happens, this it's kind of here to stay. But I must say, it really does create it does create an opportunity for a lot of real journalism again. With the kind of growth we've seen on our digital platforms, and not just us, other serious news brands as well, has helped me with my conviction when I say this to Shoma. It's really helped me say that audiences want authentic stuff. They want to be authority. They want original reporting. Where if everybody's just going to opine, where what will you be left to opine on?
Right. So, when you said that there is a lot of internal concern about the profession, can you articulate without, obviously you said you're not going to name, and these are all Chatham House conversations, but what is the main concern that the peer owners are articulating?
No, I mean, I think that the tonality, the tenor of the conversation that is happening on TV has descended to a new low, which is really not sustainable. It discredits the entire institution of journalism, and it makes the channels look petty. And if the channels are looking petty, then they start losing their clout, and people don't take them seriously. And look, the only thing we have left with us is trust that we have built. These kind of petty fights is going to eradicate that trust. And so I think promoters are much smarter than you give them credit for, and I think that they realize that, and so that's where there's a concern, I guess.
So what do you think of the unprecedented case that Bollywood has filed against Republic TV in Times Now?
I don't think it was very wise of Bollywood to file for 34 personalities in Bollywood to file a defamation case against two channels, because you're talking about free speech on the one hand, on the other hand, just because you don't like this particular free speech, you're taking a view. I think it shows Bollywood as extremely thin-skinned, and it shows them as people who are fighting back just the same way as they were kind of attacked. And I don't think that that's, again, being an absolutist, as you said, for free speech. I mean, I think the better approach would have been to just either engage with those channels. If you can't engage with those channels, you engage in another channel, put your perspective out, have a view, write to an authority. But to, again, to defamation, and honestly, you're again just forcing two sides to the story, and again just dividing it. Now again, there's no common fact for these two sides to come together anymore.
But Anant, so I'm really glad you brought that up, because again, I wanted clarity on this whole issue of defamation and people's recourse to being abused by the media. And when I say abuse, again, let's define what free speech is. I really am an absolutist. So, even people may say things I absolutely dislike, or they can even hate on others, is all good. But if you lie, if you put out fake allegations, if you incite violence, that doesn't constitute free speech. So I think now the media has taken that license that you can say anything about anyone. And if they take recourse, what recourse do they have? They don't have a 24-hour channel to have, to be defaming you in the same way. So why is this going to court seen as so wrong by the media? Because if we have power over others, there has to be a check on us as well, And you take the Arushi Talwar's parents, you take Shashi Tharoor, you take so many civil activists who've been hashtagged as urban Nakshals. There's just no evidence backing that opinion. Now, that's just fake opinion. I mean, I really feel that there has to be recourse. And so I would like to ask you, for those who are abused and vilified and wrongly done by the media, what is the option? What should be the limits on the media?
I mean, look, it's a very subjective thing. It's a personal call. If you ask me, you're a public figure, you got to grow a thick skin, and you got to be able to, you fight back, you go to another channel and express your view. I really think, if you ask me, Ria's interview, she gave a few interviews, before she went to jail. I think just look at how that kind of changed so much public perception of Ria. The people who didn't want to believe her didn't believe her. But a lot of people who kind of, were in the middle, or they didn't really know. I mean, at least they got her side of it. So I think, that I thought would have been a smarter approach to do. I think Bollywood could have done that as well. But to put 34 of the biggest, Bollywood personalities into a defamation fight, you're obviously, it's not helping your cause, because if your cause is free speech and if your cause is inclusiveness, etc., you're just showing that you just don't have, you're displaying it as a one-way street. So I'm just going to try and draw a distinction between public figures who are in media like Bollywood versus, a normal guy on the street who, TV maybe picked up and sort of called a thief or a murderer. I mean, then of course there's a different sense of fighting back and a different sense of recourse. But look, there's no. I mean, I don't have a. I mean, this is just my view about how it looks as an audience. It looks like aggressor versus aggressor. And I don't think that that's helping the cause.
So, I mean, normally the powerful filing defamation on a scrappy media media outfit is very different from a very powerful establishment being taken on by another powerful establishment. The only, maybe I'm here putting my opinion on the matter, is the difference in tonality is that it's a defamation suit that is asking for a certain, going back to professional standards.
Yeah.
It's not vilified or named anyone. It hasn't, it hasn't sort of abused the people that it is filed the suit against. Whereas what the industry and many individuals within the industry have been day in and day out reviled, and vilified. And I think that there's a tonal difference in the two attacks, if you're going to call it.
I understand that. Sure. But again, audiences don't have the time for all this. Shoma. You and I have the time for it. Audiences don't, for them it's just like, okay, now they've all ganged up, and so again, they are not going to, I don't think they're going to be able to win the other side with this attack. So I don't think, I'm just wondering strategically, how does this kind of help them?
The other interesting development that there's been is that Rajiv Bajaj, Parle, a few corporates are beginning to say that they will not
More
advertise.
power to them, really more power to them. I mean, it's not just reach and frequency. When you advertise, you have to think beyond reach and frequency, and people do. I mean, it's also the association. What kind of content are you associating with? What's the kind of engagement you have with the audience that is consuming that piece of content? And what are you supporting at the end of the day? And I mean, I'm honestly, I'm so impressed that they took that strong stand. Especially because some the so-called hate mongering, channels are seen to be close to the establishment. To take a contrarian view as a corporate is just so difficult. Such sensitive times we live in. But I think they put all of that aside and said, look, this is not government. It's none of that. It's just me saying I don't want to support this, and there are alternate ways to reach that audience, and why not?
So we come to the whole issue of the relationship with the government, media's relationship with government. And again, like Express has had that history of the emergency. But at this moment, the government is playing a big role in the way the media wars are panning out. How do you feel that one should negotiate that? And secondly, do you even think that the media is covering the big stories that it should be covering? So if you were to just pick 5 big stories that should be getting media attention right now and is not, what would you pick?
I mean, look, I have a pretty clear conscience that the Express is doing what it should be doing, and I don't think there's anything that. I mean, I sleep very well at night, saying that there's nothing that we think should have made the paper but didn't because of a phone call or because of pressure. And I think that to the government's credit, I do think that they're understanding that there is media that is out to get them, and there is media that is just actually doing its job. And I think that distinction has become clearer to government and to audiences both. Today, I think the fact that some of the so-called anti-establishment, strongly anti-establishment, news voices have never done a story about something that the government does deserve credit for, just that makes them lose the legitimacy of actually asking a tough question. I think that, today I have a very clear conscience of saying that, if I ask a tough question, it is not because there's any agenda. It is because that, we think this is a question that should be asked.
You're saying that you haven't come under pressure to...
Honestly, not. I personally haven't gotten the kind of, not to the extent that is being spoken about. I personally haven't experienced. Of course, there is that social media trolling that will come no matter what you do, and of course that bit. But I'm just trying to ignore that and just just offering a certain contrarian view to what I'm hearing around broadly. Is that I think that certain sense of maturity and understanding is coming.
Not in relation to the Express, because you've already explained that your objectivity is a kind of protection. But when we're looking at, say, how government is relating with media at this time, what are the things that would concern you in terms of what the government is doing with other media, not with the Express?
No, look, I think, if you look at government media relationships, across the world, it has never been in government's relationship to allow free press to thrive in that sense, right? It's always been in their interest to control the narrative. I don't think this government pressure is a new phenomenon. I mean, it's been there for donkey's years. I live in the Express Towers. It's a building in Urban Point that my grandfather built. It was the tallest building in Asia for all of 2 months. And the legend goes that the Air India building, which is like literally an arm's length distance from us, is in front of us, which is the iconic Air India building at the end of Marine Drive that every photograph of Bombay has. Legend goes that building was made 3 stories taller just to block my grandfather's view of Marine Drive. That was the kind of pressure that this company has seen. That's the kind of pressure journalism has seen. So pressure on media is not new. Those who want to take it will take it, and those who kind of
Anant, if I don't joke with you on that point, we'll both be ridiculed. But when you're saying that's the kind of pressure the group has faced, there are others who've been jailed and have UAPA cases and NSA cases. So that's...
Of course. I mean, I'm saying it descended to such pettiness. I mean, there was no... I mean, of course, editors and experts in emergency,
yeah.
I was trying to find a fact that nobody knew. So
right.
Newsprint wasn't allowed to come in to Express Towers, you have to print the newspaper, and there were two editors who were jailed, one reporter, one editor who was jailed. Electricity was cut off. My grandfather was selling his wife's jewelry to keep the paper running. So advertisers were told not to advertise in the Express. All kinds of pressure tactics have been used in India, around the world. But really, it's up to the promoters and the business, the guys who actually fund these enterprises to really take a call. I think that's a very definition of journalism, of just any news brand that has a certain longevity, needs to be able to be independent and kind of have a voice that speaks truth through power. And actually, come back to what I started with. I think that we're kind of missing that one cause. Each organization needs to, I think, introspection, find that one cause that kind of keeps them going beyond profit. So if your cause is profit, then you're going to allow yourself to be pushed here and there.
What if somebody sees hyper-nationalism or hate as a very good cause? Because they are obviously
we have to accept that there will be. I mean, if somebody says hate and hyper-nationalism is their cause, if they define it as that, and there is an audience for that, and there are advertisers who support that, and it kind of works, we have to be okay with an industry that has that. I mean, we can hate it. We don't like it, but I mean, if you really want to be a thriving, dynamic, pluralistic media environment, there will be all types. I mean, just look at the West. How many types of media are there?
What I'm missing, perhaps even in your articulation, and you've been very upfront, and you really have shared a lot. I'd say 20% of what you actually think. But the point I'm trying to ask you, and maybe forcing you to make, is that every profession has some basic rules of that profession. So I think when you're still saying cause or common ground or common facts, we're still missing that.
No, the basics of the profession is fairness, is giving the other side a chance. These are all the tenets of journalism that we were taught and we believe and we hold very true to. There are organizations today which are successful, I guess, that are just rejecting all these rules and saying, to hell with you, and we don't care about how you define journalism. We don't care about how you think of it, and this is what we're going to do. It's sad. That's kind of that it's working. But again, I have to say that for some reason it is working. I mean, we have to understand why it's working and how long will it be before they kind of, stop working. But for now, it is working. And for some reason, audiences are saying, we don't care about the other perspective. We just want to hear our perspective. Or we just want to hear what we kind of agree and believe. We have to accept we're in a little bit of a low point as an industry because of this. That's not to say that there isn't an incredible amount of awesome journalism that has happened, which has helped society, which has brought the country together. We have done it. Other brands have done it. We shouldn't let two successful formats, make us question ourselves to the degree of that. We are doing good stuff. We are doing an important role, and we're doing it in a sustainable fashion. There are two maverick formats today that we, for whatever reason, is working. It's a matter of time, I guess, before either they're not taken too seriously or they kind of will reform themselves.
Just to finish this bit about the regulation and self-regulation, Anant, do you think at all that at least a few basic steps, which is what that everyone that's considered a newspaper or a channel has to become part of one common body, of a peer body? It's not an option. It shouldn't be an act of choice. And secondly, since we're in the business of public reputation, and we named the Talwar, so Shashi Tharoor, your hashtag Riya as the Vish Kanya, this hashtag journalism, by the time the verdicts come, there are too many people who've lost their lives, lost their reputation, lost their professions. There's no recourse. And I really think, since the media is in the business of lives, those lives should have some capacity to contain the damage being done to them. So I would ask you that, have we at all spent time thinking on that? For instance, can that regulation be that if you have reviled someone when you're proved wrong, like the CBI has said, Riya did not murder, Riya did not siphon funds, she's been destroyed by this kind of vilification campaign.
In fact, we broke the story that the ED says that there was no siphoning of funds from Riya.
Yeah. But do you think that at least those channels should be forced to carry those headlines for the same duration, to say we were wrong, we were wrong, we were wrong? I think just that bit of regulation has to come in. There's too many lives just being destroyed.
Look, the short answer is yes. I would love for all channels to be more balanced and be objective and, give all sides of the story. But I just don't see it happening here. I don't see anybody today in such a polarized place we're in. I just don't see any human being sort of who's actually objective and neutral, uh, being given the legitimacy, the locus to sit in judgment on these kinds of decisions.
I get it. I just feel that if we're going to discuss regulations, it's going to come. And I think, the profession should start beginning to discuss what the curtailments of the profession should be, because otherwise it's going to come in a shape which really harms the profession. So
I completely agree with you. But I also, and you're absolutely right, and it scares me. But I also want to say that these people, again, the granddaddies of journalism, there has to be some introspection as to why they are so delegitimized. Why is it that they just have been in this position? And the funny thing, Shoma, that just baffles me is these are people who keep fighting for occupying more of that extreme space. They don't want to come to the center at all. They just want to keep fighting with each other for a more and more extreme view. You have to go back to having a humility when you talk to your audiences, and when you understand media is audience. It's the most consumer facing business in the world, really. And we just spend precious little time understanding the audience, and that's exactly why I think we're in this mess.
This thing about audience, I totally agree with you that it's an audience-facing profession, but leaving it to the audience, obviously, it's the same society that fought the independence movement. It's the same society today is driven by bigotry and toxicity. And, even the Tablighi Jamaat, let's take something as unpopular as that. They were hashtagged as Corona Jihad because they were playing to the audience mood. Every channel was doing that. And today, it's proved that there was a lot of fake videos. The High Court is saying that they were made scapegoats. I'm not sure that the audience is going to do that.
I'm not saying that whatever is popular is right. Please don't misunderstand me when I say that. We have to invest in being able to tell responsible, authentic, good, honest journalism in a compelling way.
Yeah, that's crucial. Yeah.
We today, I think 30, 40 years later, I don't know who are the people that will lead news industry. Who are those editors that that will be able to? There was this guy. You may remember him, guy called Prabhas Joshi. He used to be editor of Jansatta.
Yeah.
The intellectual humility of that man. He would talk with the same curiosity to my cook as he would talk to my dad, as he would talk to the watch. Like, he just had this, and the breadth of knowledge. I don't know who the Prabhas Joshi of 30 years from now is. Who is Prabhas Joshi even today? I don't really know anymore. Just because the leaders of news media kind of have gotten so, sorry to, I hope I'm not sounding like complaining too much, but it's gotten so obsessed with, their own following, their marketing, that somewhere they've lost that connect with the audience, B, the larger purpose of the profession.
So, you spoke of the call Mahatma Gandhi gave, and then the emergency, the role the Express played. Your third generation, if in a line, if you were to sum up what you feel is the legacy you want to leave and what Express needs to do right now, what do you see to be the purpose of your?
I think I would, if I were to find one purpose, and I'm trying to rally people to accept this as one sort of mission statement, I would think today it is misinformation. I think finding truth in this post-truth world, I hope it doesn't sound like platitudes, but I genuinely believe that this is something where there's a lot of reader interest for the truth. We are discounting that. I think misinformation today is a great cause that I think can align everything, can align business, can align editorial, can align readers. I think that's fundamental to kind of one of the changes I would like to see in any newsroom release is really putting the reader in the middle of it.
The part that I didn't speak about at all is the dogfight that's broken out in the media. I've asked you about the court cases, the defamation, but what about the dogfight?
The TRP thing?
Yeah, the TRP and the fact that the channels are now, calling each other out, name calling. What do you think about that, and what would have been the alternative to that?
Yeah, I just wish somebody was the bigger person and didn't, somebody somewhere should have just ignored, rather than getting into this. I guess the product of the times we live in, short term, you just feel a little alienated, and you kind of, I guess, are, you're baited. You're just kind of baited to do this, and I don't think in the long term it helps the brand, it helps the cause, it doesn't help the personalities involved, certainly doesn't. But unfortunate.
So that brings us, the whole TRP. So when that conflict between profit and purpose comes up, one, have you ever faced that? And two, what is the guardrail you use to navigate your own journey through that?
No, I mean, I've faced it, I think, countless number of times. And, I think my heart and soul has always been sort of more journalistic than business. So my instincts are to go with sort of what the journalistic response should be. When I joined Express Shoma, I must tell you, almost 9 years ago now, this was a big conflict in my mind. I always wondered, yeah, is this sustainable? Financial independence is the ultimate independence. How do you hire the best talent if you don't have the best P&L to pay for it? How do you get the best reporters if you don't have the money to if you can't afford them? But I must say, I mean, 9 years now, we have grown as a digital brand. We've grown from 2 million users to 190 million users a month now. We're one of the largest digital news brands in the world. Do we make a lot of money? I wish we made much more. We don't. But we have gotten to a certain scale of operation today because I think, we stuck to our guns. I'm not plugging Express. I genuinely do believe that, investing in domain authority, investing in authoritative voices, in original content, in original reporting, in a certain authentic voice does work in our field. And I think it is showing that it's paying off.
Thank you. That's a good note to end on.
All the best.